Occasionally, some games will try to reach beyond certain conventions to bring a totally new experience to the player. It seems like Arrest of a Stone Buddha by publisher and developer Io set out to do just that. Unfortunately, the deep concepts introduced missed the mark. In Arrest of a Stone Buddha, you take control of an unnamed hitman. Each of his targets seem to be a person in a position of power. After he takes out his objective, he's confronted with a wave of suit-wearing baddies all looking to take revenge for their fallen boss. Following the assignment, he meets with his coworker and lives an otherwise mundane life, wandering around the city until his next job. Little to no exposition is given to the player, only vague hints are given throughout with relatively unrelated small talk with your informant. After a while, you learn that you have insomnia and often need sleeping pills to get any rest, otherwise you stay awake for days. During shootouts, your character casually walks away from the scene of the crime while attempting to disarm and kill hordes of enemies coming at him. You begin armed with a handgun but will quickly run out of bullets. To obtain more ammo, you can break the gunman's arms that are closest to you and steal their firearms. Each weapon in the game acts differently, but I'm not so sure about the rifles, as I could never get close enough to take them. Ammo is limited, and you'll have to make a judgment call who to take out with a gun and who to take out breaking their arm. Enemies will run towards you, but can stop at any time to pull out their weapons. Any armed enemies can use their allies in front of them to serve as their shield, while they can shoot directly at you doing damage. If you press down to crouch and shoot, you can bypass unarmed enemies to shoot the gunman furthest from you. It's a neat feature, but one that takes some getting used to, as there is a delay in crouching. I found myself shooting before I was fully down, wasting precious ammo and milliseconds before adjusting to this delay. The button schemes in this game are each confusing, with multiple buttons needed to perform necessary actions. Given that shoot and disarm are your two most used actions, I'm not sure why neither has a dedicated button. You typically clear these shooting stages by reaching the opposite side of the screen. Enemies on and off screen will keep coming until you cross the very end of the screen or enter the designated door. I'd say probably 75% of my deaths came from nearly crossing this finish line only to be shot by a henchman not even shown on screen. This leaves more up to chance than skill and feels frustratingly cheap. To make levels more manageable, there is an easy mode, which I ended up opting for. In this mode, you can take more shots, but all previous things mentioned are still present and rough to get past. After you complete each mission, you are left to wander the city. There are a couple locations you can check out, like the pharmacist, movie theater, museum, bar, and your apartment, but each of these destinations offers little to do. Within the first hour, I realized interacting with anyone doesn't really lead to much. You can watch a movie, buy a drink, maybe get some clothes or sleeping pills, but actual conversations don't take place. This wouldn't be a big issue if you could just move on to your next hit, but the game forces you to wait about 2 days until each mission. The more you walk around, the faster time will pass. You can buy sleeping pills to pass the time, but you must wait until 6 PM in-game time before you can do this. It doesn't help that your character moves ridiculously slow. After doing everything the city had to offer, I found myself wondering if I was indeed the slowest person in the city. Many passerbyers lapped me, but I eventually found a random citizen who was my athletic equal and raced him. It was a draw. If that's not evident how psychologically maddening the waiting was, I don't know what is. Many times I would just leave my Switch on and go do something else while the days passed. I understand that this meaninglessness is supposed to reflect what your main character is feeling, and that he's bored and restless when he can't sleep or shoot anything, but I think there are more creative ways to represent this monotony. That said, if these sections are considered to be essential to the game, I believe refining other aspects, like the interactions, would have gone a long way to making these waiting periods feel more deliberate. There are some positives, like the fantastically beautiful and melancholy soundtrack that fits the mood of the character and city perfectly. Sprites and the environment are also well done and give a nice bit of variety to each stage. The brutality and aesthetic are reminiscent of the 80s Hong Kong action movies, and Arrest of a Stone Buddha captures that well. Arrest of a Stone Buddha requires patience from its players. Without that, it loses all of its core concepts. Still, getting past the lengthy in-game day cycles are merely rewarded with shootouts full of cheap deaths and confusing mechanics. The game attempts to add a layer of immersion that doesn't really work as a game, since the fundamental interactions with the world aren't all that interesting. Sure, the soundtrack and art direction captured the depressing atmosphere, but other parts of the game aren't as effective. There are definitely some good ideas and commendable risks taken here, but sadly they don't come together to achieve the emotional impact intended. Noisy Pixel is giving Arrest of a Stone Buddha a 5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to bring you news, reviews, previews, and more. Please subscribe to keep up with all our future content.